What's on your radar, Ryan?
Well, in early May, I published a story at The Intercept that found Ohio congressional candidate Shontel Brown was essentially pleading for an intervention by a super PAC into her race against Nina Turner in the special election there. Now, candidates are legally barred from soliciting super PAC support, but Brown made her request in code, but it wasn't a very subtle code. And yesterday, the request was finally fulfilled, and a super PAC called Democratic Majority for Israel started running 30-second ads for Shontel Brown against Turner. Now let's walk through exactly how Brown went about silently soliciting a super PAC intervention. In the campaign industry, the term red box refers to a spot on a campaign website used to communicate with outside groups. Citizens United, when it legalized unlimited spending on campaigns, put in place one tiny little restriction. Campaigns couldn't directly coordinate with outside independent groups. Otherwise, they're not independent, and therefore they'd be subject to limits. Campaigns have gotten around that by communicating on their website publicly inside this red box. Typically, campaigns put opposition research and messaging in the red box so super PACs know how the campaign wants them advocating on their behalf, and they know what attacks the campaign wants them to make. Sometimes the red box includes B-roll of a candidate talking to a group of children, or walking with a spouse, or shaking hands with normal-looking people, the type of footage a PAC needs to make an attack ad. Shontel Brown's red box, which you can see here, is filled with generic hits against Nina Turner. They boil down to a simple charge. She's not a loyal enough Democrat, and she said mean things about Joe Biden. Nowhere in the oppo is there anything about Turner's position on Israel or Palestine. Yet when I looked at the site in May, there was something bizarre right underneath the red box. Since my story published, it's been changed, but underneath the oppo was a stray, random quote from a man identified as Mark Mellman, whose title was given as DMFI PAC president. There's no question that Brown is going to be a solid ally of Israel, Mark Mellman said. At the time, DMFI had endorsed Turner, but hadn't committed to spending the kind of money DMFI sometimes does against squad members or against Bernie Sanders. Mellman, though, wears many hats, most prominently head of the Mellman Group. So why put a Mellman quote right underneath the red box? The meaning was clear. Please run a super PAC, and here's how to hit Nina Turner. In a rotating box, it also includes two similar quotes, one from Michael Siegel of the Jewish Agency and the other from Jeff Mendelson of Pro-Israel America, which has also spent heavily against squad members. The red box has a list of positive things to say about Shontel Brown, and the top one reads, Shontel Brown makes history as first female African American to lead the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party. That's also the first nice thing the DMFI ad says about Brown, while not saying anything about Israel from start to finish.
Brown made history as the first black woman to lead the county Democratic Party.
The rest of the messaging also aligns with Brown's red box. Let's play the whole thing to get a sense of it.
Shontel Brown or Nina Turner? Who can we trust to deliver on President Biden's agenda? Shontel Brown, a proven leader who will work with Biden and Harris to get results. Brown made history as the first black woman to lead the county Democratic Party. She added over 100 beds to our health center, caring for the most vulnerable. Shontel Brown. For Biden, for us. DMFI PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That Metro Health Medical Center thing, that's also in the red box. Now, the primary is August 3rd, 5 weeks from now, and DMFI can spend a lot of money in that amount of time, blanketing the district with the message that Nina Turner is too radical and too mean to Joe Biden to serve in Congress. DMFI tried a version of that against Jamal Bowman down the stretch in his race against Eliot Engel, but as our reporting in The Intercept showed, a lot of it was being done with money from Republican donors, and the spending backfired. Turner's long career in the area is some inoculation against the massive monetary onslaught that's coming her way. As a state senator, she was known as a deal maker, took some centrist positions like support for charter schools, and when she announced her run for Congress, she had the backing of serious members of the local political establishment. What's interesting is the different reactions from different factions to all of these different facts. For the National Party establishment, for people like Hillary Clinton, Jim Clyburn, or the donors to DMFI's super PAC, Nina Turner is the kind of threat that requires a full frontal assault. On the left, there are thousands of progressives still with her, so to speak. And each time an establishment figure endorses Brown, Nina Turner raises another $100,000 in small dollars. Another faction of the left, meanwhile, has already given up on Nina Turner, angry she hasn't criticized Biden in the primary and worried she'll be disappointing in the House and too often be a reliable Democratic vote. And you know what? Given her career in Ohio, it's a pretty safe bet she will indeed disappoint a lot of people by not being as adversarial in the House as they hope. Yet corporate interests and the party establishment are so hostile to her election, they're leaving no dollar unspent. These establishment figures aren't stupid. They wouldn't waste their time or their donors' money if they didn't think it mattered. And so we're stuck in a limbo where the squad is looking to be team players and they're with their colleagues in the Democratic Party, and their colleagues in the Democratic Party are simply trying to destroy them instead. And doing it in a coordinated fashion that Anthony Kennedy must be looking at and see, gee, I never saw that coming when I wrote my Citizens United decision. Because the argument goes like this, that, okay, it is constitutional to have limits on what a candidate can raise into his or her political action committee, and then what they can use to spend. But if you're just an independent outside person who has some sort of interest in seeing Shontel Brown or Nina Turner elected, then the First Amendment says you should be able to say that. If that's your goal, we can't stop you from doing that.
Right.
But a conflict arises if you're giving the money, when you're giving the support directly to the candidate, because then it creates an appearance of corruption, and then the public loses a faith in elections. That's the Citizens United argument. And so they say, well, as long as there's this wall of independence, then it's just somebody spending money. But if you have a super PAC out there that is taking all of its cues from Shontel Brown's website, and Shontel Brown signaled to the DMF PAC president, 6 weeks ago that she would really love to have a super PAC come in without saying out loud that she would love to have a super PAC come in, it creates the exact same appearance of corruption that the Citizens United authors said undermines faith in elections.
I see campaign finance regulations in the same way that we talked about the tax code the other day, in that it is not just Citizens United, and Citizens United is one thing, but unless there's a system-wide overhaul, unless we have publicly funded campaigns, you have a mess no matter what, because there's so many different regulations on so many different states. We have this weird patchwork of federal and state regulations. We have this weird patchwork of federal regulations in and of itself. And again, unless you have an entire overhaul of the system, there's going to be money going to places in ways that are corrupt, whether they're they're corrupt in public view or they're corrupt out of public view, and that's the distinction to this point. And the red box thing is so interesting that you narrowed in on that, because when you see it, when you actually see what they're doing and dumping this stuff onto a site, and then you can see it, you can trace the line right into the ad.
There it is.
Straight into the ad. Do you think that this messaging is going to be effective for Shontel Brown? I thought that ad was pretty good. If I'm someone who's trying to reach average voters in that district, I thought that ad was pretty good. It might all be a lie, but I thought it was a well-done ad.
I think I don't know about the musical choice, but the ad was otherwise, yes. I think if Nina Turner were less well-known in the district, that it might stick better. I think if it were purely an MSNBC watching electorate, that it would completely work on them. But Turner has been a public figure there for a very long time, and people know her, as Brianna Joy Gray was saying, but before Bernie, and they know her as somebody who was a supporter of Bernie, but they also know her as an independent actor in her own right. And you and I were talking about this earlier. It's not just Democrats who do this; Republicans do it as well. And you reminded me of that amazing Ted Cruz moment where he posted a bunch of B-roll in a red box of him interacting with his family and interacting with regular people.
Why would he have done that?
Right. And so it's 2 hours of footage for super PACs to use. But it was, of course, hilarious because Ted Cruz trying to do things with regular people is amazing. Let's play a little bit of that B-roll from Ted Cruz.
There's a whole lot more of Cruz to learn about. And he's made it easy with a collection of videos his campaign posted on YouTube. It's over 13 hours of raw footage of Ted Cruz doing presidency stuff and listening to his family say really nice stuff about him.
I love you, Mom. Love you too, dear. I'm proud of you.
One more hug.
I love you, Mom.
And hold for a second.
So horrible.
One more hug. Hold for a second. Like, oh my God. So these are the sacrifices that our public servants make for their super PACs.
Right.
And so what he's doing there, and the same thing Shontel Brown's doing, is saying here are the things that you can use. You know, if your polling shows that Ted Cruz is not cuddly enough, here's a half an hour of me on the couch hugging my mother, and hopefully you can find 5 seconds in there that looks natural enough.
Yeah.
That we can air that.
It's not going to be easy. But, you know, the thing is, though, some anti-establishment candidates obviously use the same rules apply to them. They use the same thing, but it's a question of sort of who has the money, right? So, like, you can use the same rules. They're just going to work a whole lot better if you have more money. And so it's not as though Nina Turner, I'm sure Nina Turner is doing some of this as well, probably.
Well, the difference, though, is that Nina Turner's relying on small dollars, which are called hard dollars, which means they go right into her campaign coffers, and so she can produce her own ads. She doesn't have to rely on a super PAC. And actually, we have one of hers, and you can see the huge difference in messaging. Let's play that Nina Turner one real quick.
Something that continues to haunt me to this day is my mother dying at the young age of 42 years old. No insurance, no money in the bank. So when I fight for Medicare for all, I'm fighting for my mama who's not here and working class people who need to have health care as a right, not a privilege. The poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class should live a good life. Wealth should not dictate whether or not you have access to health care. I'm Nina Turner, and I approve this message.
And not only Medicare for all, but just to hear a candidate use the word poor in an ad is very unusual. Meanwhile, elements of the left got upset with her because she used the phrase access to health. Even though it said she's talking about Medicare for all. And also, I don't actually see a huge problem with that phrase, access to healthcare. People don't want healthcare unless they need access to it. I don't want to go to the doctor.
Right.
Unless I need it. If I want it, I want it to be there. If you have Medicare for all, you have access to healthcare. I get that Democrats for a long time used that as a talking point to get away from Medicare for all. But come on, in this come on, like
it's literally an accurate word. Right. Yeah, it's a silly thing to get controversial about because it has a history. There's no reason. I mean, she's literally using the word in a very accurate sense as to what she's talking about. But I would just add that I think that's a great ad. We talked about it last week and how it sort of reminded me of the Randy Bryce ads from couple of years ago. But it is a good reminder. She's a good reminder of how when we nationalize some of these very local primary battles, if you're looking at somebody like Shontel Brown and Nina Turner, it gets lost that Nina Turner is somebody who does have a really long history and a lot of like grassroots goodwill and knowledge and experience right there. And this is sort of like when we try to nationalize these things and make them, it gets reductive. And so this is super fascinating information, Ryan.
And later in the show, we'll have David Sirota on talking about what the pharmaceutical industry's response was to her having the gall to mention Medicare for all in her campaign. But Team Rising joins us next.